Hello, everyone on our YouTube channel and our podcast feeds. I am Dayne Young from UGAsports.com, and this is Around the League. We are back for our second season. This is the SEC-centric show. Alongside me are Jim Donnan, the College Football Hall of Famer, and Brent Rollins from Pro Football Focus. And Brent, I'm going to let you kick it off this season because we have two new sponsors, and I'd love for you to tell us about Connor Grading and Landscaping.
Yeah, so one of the back and better than ever. We got a couple of sponsors that saw what we were doing and wanted to join in. So we got Connor Grading out of Monroe, Georgia, do a thing. Head over to their Facebook page. I just saw that they did a big backyard piece, putting green type thing. So anything from outside your house, even grading from the start, work with whomever if you want to get them from the start and then use them through the end of your house completion. So we got some product demonstration that the folks might want to see. Lane's Barbecue. This is seasoning. We even got some kind of sweet, the sauce and rubs that they have. So they are jumping on. And I know people that subscribe and watch the podcast that it's Go Dogs, GODAWGS as a off coupon while we're doing this. But yeah, excited to be back to hear from Coach and rolling, get this season rolling.
Coach, this is kind of the full sign for us that football season is here because after this week, we have college football happening and the SEC coming here within a week now, which is pretty exciting for all of us. So welcome back, Coach Donnan, to what we're doing here with Around the League. And for everyone just joining, Around the League ATL, that was intentional because the show is about the path to Atlanta for SEC teams. Coach, just your overall thoughts about having a season right around the corner.
Well, one thing that all of us are excited about is all the camp from the standpoint of, even though they certainly have COVID restrictions and he's certainly going by a lot of different protocols, everybody is working at it pretty well. It's pretty much like we've had in the past. Hopefully going to have stadiums and atmosphere and recruiting starting to go 100% now, where coaches had kids on campus and kids got able to make official visits. So it's about as normal as it can be. You expect the teams to be ready to go a little bit more this year when they weren't as a team or doing Zoom meetings and things like that. I'm excited, always to see how our team's going to do, but also around the league, we've got 4 new coaches. We've got some teams coming back with some really good rosters that finished the season well last year. And weekly, we'll be able to go over this and put it out for all the fans that aren't necessarily people and put it out there what we think about the rest of the league. So it's going to be up for grabs this year probably than in the past in the West, because Alabama's got some question marks, but they certainly got a good team anyhow. But we'll go over all that. I also want to reiterate how much we appreciate these 2 new sponsors, and we'll do all we can to promote them. And we got a lot of good fans out there that understand people and take care of our own. So good job by Brent getting these sponsors, and we'll do all we can to help them get people to use their stuff. And I probably need somebody to come over here pretty quick and do some grading around my house if it keeps raining like this.
We say it all the time, support the people that support us. We'll tell you more throughout the show about Lane's Barbecue and Connor Grading and Landscaping, how you can contact them, and they can help out your tailgating needs, whether it's on the road for Lane's Barbecue or at home with Connor Grading and Landscaping. This could be, though, guys, the last season that the SEC is comprised of 14 teams. So we'll get to that a little bit later on of what could be happening in the next couple of years. We will see. But what I want to start with is just quick hitters on each team here. So I'm going to limit you both 20 seconds. Coach, I'm going to just say a team. You're going to give me your general thoughts on that team and its off season, maybe projecting forward. And Brent, I want you to use your data mine and PFF information to give me a player to watch from each of those teams. And Coach, we're talking about Alabama alphabetically number 1, but also in rankings number 1. Let's start with the reigning champion, Crimson Tide.
The thing about this team, I think, better is their defense is not going to be up as many points as they have. They won't have to outscore people. They certainly got some outstanding linebackers, as many as any team in the secondaries. Got question marks at quarterback with a new guy, but he certainly got the pedigree. So Alabama team's going to have to win a little bit different than they have in the past, but they're still going to be able to roll tide.
Brent, player to watch.
Coach just talked about the defense. It's Will Anderson Jr., who last year was one of the highest graded defensive players in the league. Had 60 back pressures, 8 sacks. And the report you hear how he's been in camp, you see a person who's on the verge of becoming that Bosa, like big time elite pass rusher.
Next up is the Arkansas Razorbacks year 2 for Sam Pittman, Barry Odom and company.
Well, they certainly got it rolling there as far as the momentum. Everybody loves Sam Pittman. 3 wins last year. We're certainly getting them going. I think they got to do better on third down defensively, get off the field. They only had 4 ticks last year. Offensively, question mark quarterback. Can this guy step up? But they got a base of a football. And with the non-conference games, they'll probably have a good shot at making a bowl.
Brent?
And that returning player is Trey Burks for them, who big, physical, 6'3", 220-pound receiver who you're looking at is quite one of the highest graded receivers in all of college football. I think the 3rd highest graded returning in all of college football was Trey Burks.
The Auburn Tigers return a lot of talent on offense and some experience on defense. New coaching staff, though, Coach.
Yeah, bringing in Brian Harsin. We'll talk about the coaches in a minute, but they got both quarterback question marks all their defense because they lost some good players. Can they make enough bigs and stay on the field offensively, with this new power running game? They got some good players, but I think Auburn's going to take a step back this year.
Auburn, best player or player to watch, Brent?
Yeah, as I say, if I asked you who is the most experienced and played the most snaps out of running SEC back, would you answer is Bo Nix? It is. He's the most experienced returning quarterback. But outside of the players in the secondary that return, they added Jashawn Miller from West Virginia. So secondary for them early, I think, keeps them in games. And their schedule to me is fun to look at and fun to think about because, they got Penn State on the road. They got LSU on the road before they even play Georgia.
Kicking it on down to the Bayou, Coach O and those Tigers.
Well, the Tigers got a lot of good players, and certainly last year was just an anomaly there. But, I think the thing there is cohesive offense. Max Johnson's coming back. They got a lot of good skilled people. Defensively is going to be the name for them. Can they stop people, get organized defensively with this new staff and, make people work, give up way too many easy last year?
Player to watch defensively is Eli Ricks, who to me, you're looking at him as someone who challenged Derek Stingley as one of these top corners and see 5-star recruit in the last played a ton as a true freshman. And like Coach said with the coach, they're trying to get that sort of 2019 and Pete's and Durante Jones, who've worked under Joe Brady and Dave. You're trying to sort of recreate that 2019 for them.
Historically, Mike Leach teams make a large step forward in year 2. Does that happen for Mississippi State?
Yeah, I think they're better because they're more established at quarterback, but they got to find somebody to play against these teams that drop 8 and, just rush 3 to be the ticket for them down the stretch last year. A lot of teams made them throw the ball in front of them. They couldn't stay on the field. Defensively, they really were a good team last year. I think they'll be much improved. Whether their record will be, it's still to be said. Mike Leach is an excellent coach.
And you're talking about that. And Martin Emerson, in terms of player to watch, the defensive, who only allowed 56% completion, 12 pass breakups to watch. But we were talking about Coach Leach, and he's only averaged less than 30 in the last 20 years. He's only averaged less than 30 points 3 times. and that was the first season in each of his jobs at Texas Tech, and then last year with Miss State. So after that, every year that he's coached, he's been over 30 points a game. So it will be interesting to see if he can actually get there based on what Coach was talking about with how defenses somewhat figured him out in the SEC last year.
What a stat that is. I mean, you don't get a sample size of 20 years much in college football, and that's just a long storied career. My favorite game of the season every year is the Egg Bowl. Just so many narratives going into it. We just talked about Mississippi State, Ole Miss on the other side, Lane Kiffin in year 2.
Well, they certainly created a lot of buzz last year, although I think realistically their offense was much better than it was the year before, but their defense continued to just be terrible, and they had to outscore. But, he's got everybody jacked up with the corral back, quarterback. I don't know if he's got the supporting cast that he had last year. Lost some good players to the draft, but it's going to be a big jump for them defensively if they're going to make a move in the league, though. Just can't continue to hope to outscore everybody. You look at the game that they played against Arkansas, weren't hitting in all cylinders and had all the turnovers. You're going to have it like that, but they got a reason to be excited when you got a quarterback like Corral, though.
Very much so. And like Coach was saying, with the loss of offense, Elijah Moore and Kenny Yeboah that were picked on Moore last year caught 86 of 100 targets. He got 85% of the passes that were thrown his way, he caught. So replacing that production key. But in terms of watch, I'm going to give a name that Georgia fans know a little bit about, former dog Otis Reese. And their defense has nowhere to go up. And he's going to play quickly after being eligible, and he's going to play a lot more this year. And they're going to do anything to get stops on the defensive side.
And then finally in the SEC West, probably the darling if most people were looking beyond Alabama for a potential SEC West champion, and that's Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher seemed like he made a step forward last year. Only one place to go from here.
Yeah, I mean, they were close last year, 9-1 to out, and haven't gotten within 30 points of Alabama since Jimbo's been there. So they made the move. They've going to go with Haynes, I saw at quarterback. So big issue. Got great receivers coming back, a big tight end, All-American type. Offensive line, got to replace some people, but their defense should be really good again, and they got a good kicking game. A&M really should be the team to challenge in the West.
Just they have talent every level, offensive receiver. They in terms of top end. While I think Georgia obviously has the deepest backfield in the SEC, A&M might have sort of those top two guys with Spiller and then A-Chain is a player to watch. Devin A-Chain, who you saw in the bowl game, just very like I originally being from West Virginia, he was very Noel Devine like package, but insane level of speed. So it consistent play from the quarterback position this year, with Haynes King being named the starter and adding a bit of a dual threat element, much like Kellen Mond had. They're gonna cause some noise because they are supremely talented everywhere else.
I want to give a quick shout out to Billy Wright here on our YouTube chat, just saying that he loves the shows that we're putting out every week, and thank you, Coach Donnan, for making time to do this. So thank you, Billy.
Thank you, Billy.
Really appreciate it, but we certainly enjoy. We're just doing what the three of us like to do instead of just talking among ourselves. We're actually on this channel, but it's a good idea to talk about the other teams, though, and makes me have to do a little prep. Both you guys are always on top of it. I'm pretty much behind on the rest of the league, but trying to catch up here.
Well, we're on to the SEC East and the team that we all talk about quite often. Let's quickly get it out there, Georgia.
Well, Georgia's got all the elements. Have had a couple injuries, but particularly at receiver when you look at Pickens being out. But I like the power game they've got. I like the quarterback that's coming back in JT Daniels. The big question for me defensively, replacing all these secondary guys that went to playing the ball in the air, being cohesive, making the calls. If Georgia can play strongly on the secondary level, they'll be a really great football team because they got a tremendous kicking game and a power running game on offense.
In terms of to me, it's which one of the soft receivers and the true freshmen takes a leap. Whether that's Jermaine Burton, Marcus Rosemary-Jacksaint, Arian Smith, or Adonai Mitchell, that's kind of making some waves as a true freshman. One of the wide receivers is going to have to take a leap to really put them, to me, in the category of a national championship type team. After game one, they're going to be double-digit favorites practically the rest of the way. So it's game one's good, and we're going to talk ad nauseum about that, especially next week. But that, to me, and then also the biggest thing I want to see is with the way we've talked about all offseason, how offensive football has sort of become the main focus of winning at a high level. In game one, is there a 4th and 3 on their own 43 where Kirby's going to have to decide, all right, is this an offensive game, offense on the field, or is this am I still going to just punt and trust my D like that? I'm very curious to see how that works with, especially who they're playing in the opener against Clemson.
To answer your first question, I cannot wave the flag harder for Marcus Rosemary-Jacksaint than I have been this offseason. I think he's probably the guy that you're looking for. Although, look, Jermaine Burton was clutch for Georgia in multiple spots last year. So it's a tough spot with some of the injuries and some of the absences, but there's some talent there too. Let's move on to the Florida Gators, replacing a lot of offensive production, Coach.
Yeah, they really, of course, Kyle Trapp, unbelievable 2 years there running the club. And I'm not going to go through everybody they lost, but, I'm an Emory Jones fan. I think he's a lot better passer than people give him credit for. I watched him camp and watched him in high school. And he's not just a running quarterback. He can throw the ball down the field. Their big question's always been offensive line of the caliber that they need, but they've been so good skill-wise that they could throw the ball. But I look for them to go back to a lot of Mississippi State stuff that Coach Mullen did with the quarterback pre-German runs with Fitzgerald and Dak Prescott. Defensively, they can't do any worse with all the points they gave up. They got to find somebody to play the other corner across from Elam. But I think the Florida Gators going to take a step back, but they're still going to be probably the second best team in the East.
I think Coach is right in terms of player to watch. I think it is Emory, and I say it because some of my colleagues at PFF have been giving Emory a love as a dark horse Heisman type and somebody that are very much watching this year. I want to see it. I want to see it on a consistent week basis. And the big order for me this year is obviously they lost all the weapons and some of the things that Coach talked about, but their schedule. Their schedule now has Bama, LSU, Georgia in sort of not necessarily consecutive, but there's teams there, and then also Florida State. Florida State and Mackenzie Milton kind of does his thing, and they feel sort of the end of the year. So their schedule is a lot more difficult than it was a season ago. So I think they're, like Coach said, possibly take a step back. Jones is going to be the key. Dan Mullen, quarterback's going to drive how well they do.
The unsung team in the SEC East, at least if you're just looking for someone to kind of punch above their weight a little bit, it's probably Kentucky, Coach, and maybe for good reason with their work in the trenches the last few seasons.
Yeah, I think as you're a Kentucky fan, this might be, you had a better football team than you did basketball team last year, and it might be the same thing again. This team is really geared up on the offensive lines, good players. And, they've gotten through the last couple of years with just running the ball without any threat of the pass. And I think bringing in this new core from the Rams, they're certainly going to do some, concept that maybe help the quarterback. They got the quarterback transfer from Penn State. So if they can get any passing game, I'm just talking about rudimentary passing game to go with this power running game they got, they're going to be a threat. And their schedule, they've got 3 lay-down non-conference games out of Louisville, but they got this kind of schedule that they can do damage this year.
Very much so. And they get Florida at home. They get LSU at home. And, interesting, Coach talks about the coordinator piece. So I went diving into some data because the Rams, Liam Cohen is their new offensive coordinator, comes from the Rams. He was actually sort of All-American at University of Massachusetts when he was in college. But his only offensive coordinator experience is at the University of Maine. And then he's been in the NFL mostly. But with the Rams, the interesting part is, so I looked at in terms of percentage of plays that were in the shotgun. Yes. they average was right around 77 to 80% over the past 3 years. The Rams over the past 3 years were only in the shotgun for 42 of their plays. The teams that do that lower than that in college, there's academies and people that run option. So you're going to see like Kentucky, if they follow that Rams mold, outside zone, under center play action, they're going to look in different than what a lot of teams are used to seeing in and around the league.
Yeah, that's going against the grain for sure. That's some good stuff there, Brent. I did not realize that about his past. We'll see what he brings in his own system when he's calling the shots, and not someone higher up with the Rams. Quite interesting there. Same thing with Missouri. Bit of an offensive shift in identity last year. Year 2 of Eli Drinkwitz. May have had a pause here on the feed. Let's see if this comes back here.
In that, and he said, well, watch the tape on. They're really doing some good things. And I watched the tape, and then all of a sudden they hired Chip Kelly. So I went on the ESPN Sports Center. I knew all about Chip. Nobody in the country even talked about him. And I gave him a big plus there because they really did some great things in New Hampshire. And you saw what he did at Oregon as a coordinator and the head coach. A lot of these guys are just waiting for the opportunity. They just got to get out there and strut their stuff.
I think we had a bit of internet interference maybe on my end. Who are we talking about there just now, Coach?
We were just talking about Kelly. Do we need to start that over or what?
No. Okay. I think we're good. Can we go on to Missouri then?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's go to the show me here. Missouri, really good year last year. I mean, nobody thought they would win that many games, and they had a couple of upsets. But, quarterback ended a real difference for them. They scored points, and defensively they brought in a new coordinator who actually has been a head coach in the road. So we'll see how that goes. But I would think that Missouri, just because of the morale and the way the state's rallying around them and all, has a chance to maybe make that next step and win a couple more games. But at the same time, they're not going to surprise anybody. And, they're in a division where, beside playing Georgia and Kentucky, and you got to beat those other teams. If you beat all the others in your division, you're in pretty good shape with your non-conference games. If they can run the table against Tennessee and South Carolina and Vanderbilt, the 3 wins right there.
In terms of players from Missouri, it's such an interesting question because they had so much go out and so much come in. They had a lot of transfer both in and out. Mookie Cooper that came from Ohio State is probably one to just an unknown on the offensive side because playmakers for the most part, other than Tyler Beatty back at running back, are gone. But if they just have to find playmakers. It would be in a lot of sort of turnover roster in year 2.
A team with a lot of turnover as well, and we're getting to the trio of SEC East teams with new head coaches. It begins with South Carolina, a new regime over there in Columbia.
Yeah, South Carolina is a situation where talent-wise, they've really got a couple really big-time guys at D-line, and but lost some guys to the draft, and one of their best corners left and went to Florida State. So I just think that quarterbacks with Doty being out, he's a good runner, but he's still got to prove he can pass. They got the good back in Harris, and they got the kid that hurt his leg the year before to be a good back too. So I think South Carolina looking at a situation where they got 3 games there, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, all of those 3 teams got to play each other. And can you win 2 of those and then hope you win some non-conference games? Because I just don't see them being that competitive against the rest of the league.
And didn't someone pick them in the East? There was 1 vote, if I remember right.
I don't remember. I'm not sure.
They're going to struggle. They're going to, in terms of players to watch. Coach said the backs are really the only offensive threats that you would know with Harris and Marshawn Lloyd coming off the knee injury. He'll be interesting to see because he was very recruited back for them and someone that they beat some other bigger schools for. But I mean, the interesting thing with being there, how much of Oklahoma's style does he bring it entirely, change it a little bit? That would be interesting to see. But yeah, they're going to struggle. Their talent is not needs to be, and it's.
Likely a similar story over on Rocky Top for Tennessee, first year of Josh Heupel and company. A lot of new guys on that roster.
Yeah, I mean, I need a real one of those pads to look at their team. I know, they lost over 20 guys in the transfer portal, some really good players. I mean, Oklahoma's got 2 guys starting for them from Tennessee. Alabama got the linebacker. I mean, you look around the country, North Carolina's got one of their running backs. I mean, they lost some premium players. They got recruited pretty well up there, Coach Pruitt. Josh Heupel has a pedigree of, running a fast offense and getting them, did a really good job at Missouri scoring points when he came in there. But I think the big question here is with that fast-paced offense, can their defense do anything to not give up as many points as they're probably going to do? Guys coming in from Penn State as the coordinator going to have to adjust to this league. We'll just have to see. A lot of question marks there at Rocky Top.
Right, including who plays quarterback. You have Hendon Hooker transfer from Virginia Tech. You have the Milton kid that transferred from Michigan. And then you have Harrison Bailey that was in-house. So who plays quarterback for them? They haven't really named a starter yet. And like Coach said, there's offensive pedigree there. Heupel, even in the SEC, Heupel averaged a game with at Missouri. There is the pedigree. And they actually do what he wants to do offensively where he is, but who knows? I think that he's going to be in a little different situation than he was at UCF.
I'm not going to believe that it's a different Tennessee quarterback other than Jarrett Garantano until I see it on the field. For some reason, I still think he's going to trot out there for another year. Final team in the SEC East is Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Clark Lee has a good degree. He's done a good job as a defensive coordinator around the country, coming in there from Notre Dame. The one thing about it, when you're a graduate of the school where you take over, the pluses and minuses, but so got to convince the people there that what's been going on is not working. So we got to change some things. I don't think they're going to change their academics, that's for sure. But they're working hard to get a new facility there for the building. They're doing all these, but the difference in Clark Lee taking over and when Mason took over, I just thought there were better players there at Vanderbilt, with it that were playing, and they had a pretty good run there under Franklin. And then they had some pretty good players early, Mason, but the last couple of years, their team just not competitive athletic-wise on the field, and hopefully they'll get some transfers. But I guarantee you, coaches, this guy with a defensive background has a chance to maybe help this team.
Do they win a game? That's the question for me. But that at least a conference game. Can they win a conference game this year? That almost would be a victory for them, to me, because in terms of talent, like Coach said, the talent is just there are a couple of guys that you could say keep your eye on, but overall the talent is just not there right now. Now, one of the interesting hires that Clark Lee made, I thought, was the hire of one of the former recruiting guys, the Barton Simmons, that's recruiting, that does personnel for them. That's someone who knows your reputation in and around the entire Southeast and the country, and someone who can help build it and looks like from a recruiting standpoint.
Someone else that has a good reputation, our friends at Connor Grading and Landscaping, based out of Monroe. If you have an outside project, whether it's your driveway, whether it's your yard, just check them out over on their Facebook page. You can see some of the recent photos of the work that they've done. You can give them a call at 770-639-3149. Connor Grading and Landscaping over in Monroe. I can tell you all the great things about them and their customer service and the way that they handle themselves. And and get the projects done, even in short windows, whether it's based on weather or other factors involved. But I can let Brent Rollins do that because he has the personal experience. He's actually had them work over near his home. So, Brent, just tell me about your experience with Connor grading and landscaping.
Fantastic from day one. And I wouldn't have actually got the CO to move in my house, help me out at the last minute there with the landscaping. They've done every landscaping project in and around my house. And I can't thank them enough for the work they've done, been prompt and very served. Mike Connor, the owner, he's always really quick to hit me back and take care of any and all issues that we have. So good people and great to work with.
Thanks, Mike Connor, for supporting us, and check out their Facebook page. That's Connor Grading and Landscaping, based out of Monroe, Georgia. Coach, we talked about some of those first-year head coaches, and I want to hit those quickly and just kind of get your thoughts on what they're bringing to their teams, what their past says they can do. So let's start with former Georgia assistant Shane Beamer, who does take over for the South Carolina Gamecocks.
Well, Shane was a fan favorite. It's one of the things that helped him get the job. A lot of the South Carolina ex-players got behind him, and he was there when Spurrier was doing well. I think the big thing is staff. He had big staff turn right off the bat, lost some hired, but these young that he hired, he's got them passed with them, and they're just going to have to, bite the bullet a little bit till they get some players. I know he'll work hard at recruiting. He never was very successful recruiting here at Georgia, but, as far as an individual recruiter, but, he's had a past where he's been involved with recruiting at some different places. But the question mark for me is, can they get some players in there? If they do, they'll be okay. But you got to look at it like this. The two biggest rivals they got are in the top 5 in the country now and everything. These players, coaching, everything, Clemson and Georgia. So they got a tough road to hoe.
Well, and Brent, on top of that, you had North Carolina to the north that has really revamped their program. Makes it even tougher for South Carolina.
Yeah, it's what do you deem as success? If success has to be, all right, you're an SEC championship game type contender team like you were with Spurrier for a few. I don't know if you're going to get there right now. You're going to have to do a lot of work and like Coach said, talent in to make sure that you get to those levels.
We talked about Tennessee for a minute. Josh Heupel, first-year head coach with the Vols.
Well, Josh has the ground playing quarterback at Oklahoma, being the coordinator there, and he has some presence as far as coaching at Missouri, where he was the coordinator, and he actually did a great job with Drew Lock there when he was younger quarterback, and then he left and took to UCF. He's got the head coaching background with 3 years at UCF, although their team tended to go from here down a little bit. They didn't progress. Their defense still had some real issues, but I think he certainly got the offensive package if he can get some players to go with it.
Brent, what do you see from a Heupel based on what he did at UCF? It's just kind of what we talked about earlier. It's can you do what you want to do? Can you run at that tempo? Can you run at that pace? Do the things that you want to do? Because one of the things that actually UCF has had is they've had pretty good players at the quarterback position. You got to find that guy. And they got three options. Who's going to be the guy for him to run his system and run it how he wants?
And then Coach Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, homecoming for him. We know the challenges of coaching at Vanderbilt in the SEC, but it seems like he's a guy that's passionate about that university.
Thing about being the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, you've got a chance to have a look at some of these jobs. So for him to go on and take that Vanderbilt job made me think that he thought they had a shot. They can't do anything but go up. I mean, that team went down every year in the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, they kept the coach, but they never were very threatening to anybody. I think the big thing there is just get your type of player, try to avoid losing. By that, I mean, don't beat yourself, be a smart team, get a couple breaks and win some non-conference game and get a little momentum. But, history will tell you that Vanderbilt is going to always struggle in this league.
Very true.
Brent, what do they do?
I'll say at least the thing with the Vanderbilt, though, is at least I think with a new staff and sort of a new energy, expenditures I think that will happen that maybe didn't happen in the past. And also, Nashville can be possibly a pull. It's one of the fastest growing cities in America. And there's lots and lots of resources and lots of people coming in. And if you can have that one little moment of success, that James Franklin, type year that you had, that maybe then that you get that momentum going. But obviously it's going to take 2-3 years to even get to that.
One thing that James Franklin had going for him, I think, more than anything, was Tennessee was down. Kentucky really wasn't doing much. They were starting to build. Georgia was up and down. Florida had some issues. I mean, he was in the league at the right time and took advantage of it, winning the state championship, beating Tennessee like he did, and getting those 8 wins a couple of years. And then he said adios. I mean, but I will say this, Bob, Coach Bobby Johnson really did a good job recruiting there. They had some players there that when you look at the guys that they sent to the pros, I mean, that to me is an indicator, because if you don't have guys that are getting drafted or that are at least getting a chance as a free agent, how you going to compete against the Georgias and Alabamas? Because that's who they got.
That's such a good point about the timing, because you look at previous years, how a team like Missouri won the SEC East back-to-back years. It takes some luck from the rest of the league having some issues too, and Missouri was at that moment to capitalize at that time. And I think that's what these 3 teams would need in over and over and over again to be able to compete at the top. So the other one in the SEC, the new coach, that a bit of a kind of off the board hire. He was not rumored in the coaching search, at least at first. Brian Harsin at Auburn. And Coach, I think one thing you can say about him is, while he may not be from the South or of the South, he made sure that his staff was.
Yeah, one of the things about Harsin, he's done a good job at Boise State, and he's been under Chris Peterson, and he had a chance to coach a couple years there for Mac Brown, and he has a really good record. But I think, to me, coming into this league, you're not going to out-coach any of these guys in this league like maybe you did in that conference. You're not going to, scheme everybody back and forth. There's just too many players. Coaching won't win for you, but it'll get you beat. If you're not as good at coach these other guys, then it'll hurt. But you just got to understand that it's your system and all is good, but coming in here and challenging Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, 2 biggest rivals, is going to be a real tough deal. Hiring Mike Bobo was really good because he's got a background in the league. Cadillac has recruiting. But Mason, to me, still got to prove he can in this league as a defensive coordinator. He did some good things at Stanford, but he didn't do hardly anything at when he took over the defense at Vanderbilt. So I think he brought his backer coach with him from Vanderbilt. That'll probably help, but on him as far as how he's going to do with the defense. And they lost a lot of good players, and he's replacing a guy in Steele who probably was one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. Auburn right now, talent-wise, is on a downer compared to what I've seen there. And you got to think, if he's there 8 years, can he beat him 3 times like Malzahn did? Can he win SEC West and the SEC championship like Malzahn? Have to see, but I think it's a situation that he's off to a bad start when he's got COVID here the week before the first game too, and we'll see how that works out.
Well, and Brent, Coach mentioned earlier how South Carolina has Clemson and Georgia, recruiting and performing like gangbusters, top 2 rivals. Same thing for Auburn with Alabama and Georgia.
Very much so. And there, I think a good start is going to be very key for him. Because when you come from the outside in a way, and you're not an unconventional hire, it's not somebody that you heard much in the media, you need some success early. And they go to Penn 3. You got to, go win that game. Go win that game. Go come home, compete crazy LSU at home, maybe even be 5-0 heading into Georgia. But, that's obviously we'll get to see that on the field here soon.
I've got two more topics I want to hit before we wrap up. And Coach, I want to start with just a lot of new coordinators and assistant coaches, new faces in new places. We've mentioned a lot of them. Brent earlier mentioned Liam Cohen at Kentucky. We just mentioned Mike Bobo and Derek Mason at Auburn. Are there any coordinators or assistant coaches that have kind of caught your eye? I know in the case of Alabama, there's some guys that you've coached with.
Yeah, I think in the case of Alabama, Bill O'Brien has such a history being a coordinator for the New England Patriots, being the head coach at Penn State, being a head coach and general manager of Texans. So he's got a background to come in there and take over for Sarkisian, who had really a big year last year. But I think system-wise that they're going to stick within the system that Nick likes. But there's a lot to the table. I mean, it's hard to get a guy that's got that much experience, and then brings in Doug Marrone as the old line coach, who was a coach for me here, and really good recruiter. He's off to start there, recruiting some great offensive linemen. So I think those two guys will help Alabama. I don't think they'll miss a beat there. Coaching, around the league, though, that there's, not anybody else that really jumps at me. I'm the guy at Kentucky. We'll see how he does. But you got so many new guys coaching at the other place. I'd say one guy to me that's on the hot seat a little bit that everybody in Arkansas is all in love with is Barry Odom. And maybe he's not on the hot seat because, but they couldn't get a deal last year. They had two games. They had one in the fourth quarter where they do anything on defense. Only moved their scoring defense 2 points from the year. I just think that they're getting a lot of credit for defense down there to me that really isn't very productive. Whether they'll be better this year, who knows? But he certainly has a background in defense, but that's what hurt him. Missouri as a head coach, they couldn't really get their defense good. But I would say watch what happens with Arkansas's defense this year. And hopefully for Sam Pittman and for Odom, they'll play better because I think their offense is going to be pretty good.
Brent, any assistants catching your eye? I'm kind of thinking of the new crew down at LSU as well.
Yeah, the offensive side of that with Pete's, who comes from the Joe Brady and comes from that and comes with the Panthers. What they had in 2019 was obviously insanely special. And do you try to recreate that exact offense? Do you even have the personnel to even come close to doing that? Who knows? Because who knows who's the second receiver for them after Kashawn Butte. So I do think they have a good quarterback in place with Max Johnson, who can give at least an element. Burrow could, a when necessary run element, so they could do a lot of the things there. It would just be interesting to see how he does handling the play calling for at that level.
Something else that's insanely special. Lane's Barbecue. Support the people that support us. This is Spellbound. This is their rub season. It's what I like the most at Lane's Barbecue are the rubs and the spice blend that they come together. They've got the savory. They've got the sweet. This is probably a little bit of both with some white sugar, brown sugar, salt, pepper, garlic, chili powder. There's some other great stuff in here. This would go good on anything. It would probably make almost anything taste good at your tailgate this year. Get you some Spellbound. You can get their original seasonings. Here's one that is the Kapalua, the Hawaiian seasoning, kind of specialty for fish. Lane's Barbecue. It is made in Bethlehem, Georgia. So it's a Northeast Georgia product. You can find it all over the state. You can go to their website. You can check out their Instagram and their Facebook page. I actually did a little PR for Lane's Barbecue in one of my previous jobs. Got to know those guys and women that are professionals over there. Just tremendous people. They love Georgia. They love what they do. They do a great job of exploring new flavors with their smokers and barbecue. This is the real deal, y'all. Get it for your tailgate. It is Lane's Barbecue. And if you go to their website right now, you can get 15% off with the promo code GODOGS. That's GODAWGS. Lane's Barbecue. My mouth is watering. Coach, you talk about mouth-watering players. I'm thinking about mouth-watering barbecue.
I think everybody get 15% off. That's a nice little lick there for everybody that watches this program. Go get it.
That's Lane's Barbecue. Again, it's a Northeast Georgia product. Support the people that support our shows, Lane's Barbecue and Connor Grading and Landscaping. Final topic that I want to hit, Texas and Oklahoma are to join the SEC at some point. Obviously not for this upcoming season. We'll see if it's next year or the year after or the year after, but it's a coming. And Coach, we have talked ad nauseum about how the league may be shifting, but just overall, what this means for the SEC with the additions of Texas and Oklahoma. When we do around the league in coming years, we'll be talking about them.
Yeah, in terms of baseball, you got sacrifice flies and singles and all. The grand slam for us. I mean, the SEC is just taking on a national stature there with these two programs. And the reason I think it helps you more than anything is just the fact your scheduling is going to be enhanced so much to help you, because everybody wants to get. We're not sure how it's going to come out, how many teams or all that. But if you got a 12-team playoff and you got Oklahoma and Texas in your league, you're going to have teams there, or at least one game against them to help your national pro. And we're going to have 3 or 4 teams from our league jumping in that playoff. And everybody else in the country scrambling right now. I mean, they're talking about things off the cuff and on the cuff and making these agreements with these signed contracts and all that. But, the SEC's up here and the rest of the leagues are lower than well manure right now as far as where they are going forward.
Brent, what do you see with recruiting, with marketing, just the footprint of the SEC expanding?
I don't think I can say any better than Coach just did right there. It's when that they are what they are. And the phrase they use, this just means more, or it just means more, it just does. And you're adding 2 places where it just means more to them too. So, it's just going to be better for the league. Just like the playoff to me, the more the merrier, have more fun, have more games, have more great atmospheres. I love sports, and this just makes it more fun.
Secretly, I just know that Coach Donnan likes having Oklahoma where he can talk about them even a little bit more.
I'm not going to go into that, Dayne, but I mean, realistically, if we had West Virginia in the league, Brent would be jumping up and down doing cartwheels. But I think the main thing that everybody needs to understand is you get a chance to go to Norman, Oklahoma, one of the most hallowed grounds in college football, to Austin, Texas, and with all the tradition and all the players, Third and Earl Campbell, the Iceman Trophy winner there, and Vince Young, all those players. The town of Austin has got to be one of the best places ever to. That's just going to enhance the footprint of our league in Dallas, the San Antonio markets, Tulsa, Oklahoma City. I mean, it's just going to help in a lot of ways. And the thing that I keep bringing, it's not just football. The other sports are going to flourish having this extra money because, we don't have any way to supplement some of these sports sometime without TV money and things like that. But hey, when the gymnastics team wants to fly somewhere, when the tennis team wants to get some extra, stay one extra night or whatever it might, they don't have the finances to do that without the football revenue. So I think all our sports are going to really benefit, and the quality of teams that Oklahoma and Texas bring in these Olympic sports. Oklahoma's in gymnastics, national champion softball, golf. Texas won the athletic director's trophy last year as the best overall program in the country for all sports. So our others flourish too, getting these teams to play against.
That's a really good point, just about the overall impact it's going to have in athletics, really around the country, but specifically for the schools. So the future is bright in the SEC. The present is pretty darn good itself, and that's what we're here to talk about on a weekly basis here on Around the League. It's going to be on this YouTube channel and on our podcast feeds on Thursdays. And again, thank you to Lane's Barbecue. I told you to go to their Instagram page. That is a piece of steak seasoned with their Q-nami. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I'm holding up to my camera right now, and man, that'll make your mouth water. Getting set for the week. We will begin previewing specific games next week. That's this Thursday, wherever you listen to Around the League, whether that's Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcast, or right here on our YouTube channel. For the Hall of Fame head coach Jim Donnan and from Pro Football Focus Brent Rollins, I am Dayne Young. Thank you for listening to what we'll call week 0 of Around the League.